All right, guys, what's going on? So today I want to go over a mentality that a lot of my fighters and athletes have based on their ability to perform, right? The reason why I say this is when I get an athlete coming into the gym, we do an initial assessment. And that initial assessment requires them to take a test, and that test is going to show me what type of personality traits do they actually have. So it's a mental assessment where I go ahead and sit them down. We communicate on things that have to do with their style of training, that have to do with their personality, like I talked about, and how they live their lives. Now, 90% of the time, and I may be overriding this, but at the same time, I've seen it through experience, that these individuals have what we call type A mentality. Now, I have Nick with me here, and Nick is one of the more experts in this situation, in this topic. And so Nick is gonna go over what a type A mentality is. And I'm gonna go over what I see on a constant basis when I talk about athletes and fighters in general in the world of combat sports. So Nick, go over type A for us real quick.
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Nick Davenport, aka Mr. Mental Muscle, and I have a master's in sports psychology, so I deal with the mental side of performance. You probably see me do different things with Dustin Poirier, with Phil, numerous other fighters. I've worked with the military, special ops even, and what we're talking about is how do we analyze how a person's personality traits can influence their behavior, how they adapt to their environment or different stressors. And a type A personality typically is, like Phil said, is what we see with these fighters because it requires a certain level of mentality to accomplish what these fighters do. They're a blood sport. They're going in there as warriors. So basically, to start it off, one thing we see is hyper competitiveness. What this means is by any means necessary. They're going to do whatever it takes. This means extra hours, working when they don't want to go. Because constantly people feel like I can't do it. They say no. Either way, I got to go out there because if I don't do it, no one else will. They might even go to the point that they might do things that may be considered not the best to get the job done. It might be frowned upon, but it's something that they know if I do this, I'm going to get where I need to be.
Well, obviously, Dustin Poirier does have that mentality. And I like to run them through what's called a Braverman's test. And that's basically a standard true or false questionnaire that they will get as soon as they step into the gym or into my office. And that kind of correlates over to the type A mentality. Now, if an individual has what we call dopamine dominance, right? So for that, if a person is dopamine dominant, have that acetylcholine type of mentality, what would you say that would run with that?
Yeah, so going back to hyper competitiveness, where you talk about dopamine, most people have heard of dopamine, they think of pleasure. What it really is not necessarily pleasure, it's more so motivation because the dopamine receptors in our brain answer to delayed gratification. And that goes perfectly with this because if you're a high level performer, you're not gonna get the win the first time you go out. You're gonna get knocked out, you're gonna get knocked down, you're gonna have days where you don't achieve, but that extra time to get there is when the dopamine receptors say, keep doing it, because it's really to reinforce behaviors. The pleasure comes after the, winning and feeling good, but it's really to say, I need to keep doing these behaviors. So when the dopamine is released to the brain and receives it, it's saying that whatever you did last week to get to the stronger lift or the better rounds with your sparring partner, you're going to keep doing it because your brain's saying that's what got you there. So the dopamine dominant person is definitely going to be hyper competitive and they're going to push beyond their limits.
And I would say somebody like an alpha mentality is definitely a type A. Another one with a temperament would be more of a choleric temperament. And those all follow along the lines of that type of mentality. And for me, when I'm looking at a fighter to see where they can go, especially the newcomers, the regional scene guys, if I know they have that mentality, we can take it to the next level because they're willing to go the extra mile. They're hyper competitive, so they want to get better. They want to progress. They're goal orientated, right? So they really are focused and they enjoy the process, which is more important than anything. A lot of times people want to see the end result super quick, and that's not MMA, that's not combat sports. You have to put in the work day in and day out on a constant basis. The guys that I've seen that made it to the upper elite level have been doing this for 10 to 12 plus years. And some, you may not even know them until they break out. And I go back to Dustin a lot because, man, he's been a part of Zuffa and UFC, with WEC for, 10, 12 years. So primarily now he's getting more recognition with the casual fans. as opposed to before. Yeah, you have some diehards that knew who Dustin Poirier was, but now he's at that level. And that goes back to, again, staying the course. And you can't have that if you don't have that type A mentality. You don't have that ability to withstand that pressure and want to achieve over and over again.
The process is what gets you going. Like I tell my clients all the time, process shapes the performance. The performance is what did you do during, and the performance gives you the outcome. So if you backtrack, it always starts from that process. So I put here goals are intrinsic. Kind of skipped over one, but we'll go back. Goals are intrinsic, meaning, like you said, it's doing it for the sake of the task. If you do it just for the outcome, you can get far, don't get me wrong, like whether it be money or some kind of fame or notoriety, but it's only gonna last. That goes back to that dopamine. It's not, your brain's not gonna be rewarded with the fact that you won. It's gonna be rewarded more so that you achieve these small goals, which build up to the bigger outcome. So when you do intrinsic goals, that means it's surely for the sake of you doing it. No one else needs to tell you, no one else needs to give you the motivation, because while it's great to have that support, don't get me wrong, you want to have a supporting team and fans or whatever it may be, but they can't be there in the ring or the cage with you. They can't be there in the practice with you or strength training with you. It's only you in there, so you got to be able to do it for you and you alone.
Yeah, I think that a lot of them do have a large amount of pride in a positive way, right? They'll work hard even when nobody's looking. I remember one of my coaches in football, high school football, like whenever we lined up, they were like, man, have pride. Even though I'm not watching you, make sure that you're running at maximal intent. You know, and there's obviously prideful things that go with, you know, your mindset too as well. And that could be a negative thing too from a narcissistic standpoint. But when we're talking about increasing your overall value as a person and being, you know, self-motivated, this is definitely what you want to accomplish when it comes down to it. Talk a little bit about extroverted and introverted. And is there a correlation between those two individuals and type A mentality?
Oh yeah, definitely. Because the funny thing about type theory, it's actually a trait theory. And I'll give you a quick rundown what that means. It means that there's a spectrum and you can fall to one side or the other. So when we talk about introverts and extroverts, it doesn't mean that you're only outgoing and a people person, or it doesn't mean you're only to yourself. It means in certain situations, you have to step up and be more extroverted to perform. So for example, I could be to myself, but I know when there's lights on me, when there's people watching, I can still perform. And an extroverted person can do that. So when you're extroverted, you have to make sure that you can shift the balance, because sometimes you have to be to yourself and not let the external social cues get to you, because there's gonna be outside social trying to get to you, trying to get in your ear, tell you what you need to do as an athlete. So you have to be able to shift that balance. So an extroverted person probably more than likely would be better for performance. So on that spectrum, you have to be able to take it in as you go in the circumstances where there's a lot of different social settings that you may not prefer, because like I said, you're going to have to perform in front of a crowd. So if you're introverted, that's something you got to work on. And you can do that by maybe having people watch you practice or things like that. Because if you get to comfortability of like, oh, I just want to practice alone, secluded, guess what? When you get to the cage, all that's going to be rehearsed. You do what you, or you are what you do all the time.
When you put it all together, right, you have your archetypes, right? You have your warrior archetype. I think that would kind of correlate over more toward that type A. You could be a king too as well, don't get me wrong. But when you're in that state, when you're going after that particular goal, when you're going after your vision and what you want to accomplish, that's where that transition happens, where you have to be in that warrior state. And so that would definitely correlate between the two. Dopamine dominant individuals, a little bit of acetylcholine, but from a neurotransmitter perspective, you're looking at very dopamine driven individuals, right? Also, you have the choleric temperament, which is more so guys and girls that are very aggressive, right? They're usually a boss type mentality, right? They're the general of their army in a sense. They don't like to play around. They want to get to whatever they need to get the goals accomplished. And then we go back to enjoying the process. And if you're not successful, it's because you didn't enjoy the process. You quit along that way.
You got to.
So for that, you have to adopt that mentality, and you should transfer your thought process over into a type A. If not, if you're looking to be successful, you're gonna fall short because you haven't adopted that mindset. And so for that, this is why this is so important.
So a lot of times you notice that people who are type A, they're work. And in modern times, that's considered frowned upon, because we got this new self-care movement, and all of us in this room, we know that it's bigger than that. So what work-life and balance means is they're going to find more time for the hard stuff. They're going to take the extra shifts if they're at a normal 9 to 5. They're going to do more practices if they're a fighter. They're going to do extra stuff. And a lot of times that's frowned upon in their social circles. Once again, coming back to, because we live in society, so we can't avoid the judgment or thoughts of other people around us because we live with other people. So they might get looked at as you have no life or you have no fun. And in actuality, they might be right. But the thing is, that's what's taken to get to that goal. You're not going to be the #1 fighter in the UFC by taking days off. You're not going to be the #1 fighter by just doing what everyone else is doing. You're going to consume it, even if it means I'm not going to go out with my friends or I'm not going to get to watch enough TV because there's bigger goals to take care of.
I think balance is something that people strive for when they retire in a lot of ways. When you're on the path of a warrior, when you're in your younger years, your 20s, even in your 30s, maybe even also in your 40s, depending on when you start, it's going to take a lot of imbalance. Honestly, it's going to take a lot of you having to sacrifice time and also sacrificing sleep, sacrificing family time. All these things are going to come into play, and you have to be willing and capable of doing that. Again, otherwise you will not be successful in that movement of what you're trying to accomplish from a goal perspective. Now, with that being said, you can also deliver what you need to on a constant basis based on all these strong suits. So goals are intrinsic, right? Finding out intrinsic goals in yourself and putting that on paper too as well. And this just goes by, being successful and having a successful mindset. And that goes back to having a type A mentality, right? So talk a little bit about working against the clock. That's what we got on the shirt.
This is probably the biggest one when you think about type A personality, because what this means is I can't just sit there and let things come to me. In my head, we're type A people, we're thinking, what more can I do? Because it's only 24 hours in a day. Most people say, oh, there's 24 hours in a day, plenty of time. That's a type B person. That's a person who just goes with the flow. While we can do that, we know that if we're not doing everything possible to get to where we're going, we're letting time slip away. So that's why you're working against the clock. You're gonna book meetings back to back, because it's not the fact that you're a workaholic, it's the fact that if I want to get this goal, I have to put things together. I have to multitask. You might eat your dinner while driving. Not recommending it, but you got to fit it in somewhere because you got to eat. And people look at it as quote unquote unhealthy. And I'm not saying this is necessarily the way to go. It's just a matter of, like you said, sacrifice. Are you willing to take these chances? And that's what's it's gonna come down to.
Well, you learn how to compound certain things, right? Instead of having to sit down and read, you may listen to an audiobook while you're driving, right? Or you may read while you're eating, or things like that. If you're looking to increase your daily value, there should be never a time where you're idled, right? Unless you need full rest. And if you're resting, you should be sleeping at that point, because you need to get ready for the next day. If you look at my schedule, it's structured through 30-minute time blocks, a lot of it. And every hour on the hour has something that I have to do. There's something there. And so for that, working against the clock, working around the clock, whatever you want to call it, the goal is to make sure that you spend every waking moment in the pursuit of your ultimate goal, right? And what you've been put on this earth to do. What is your talent? Find that first, have that self-awareness, and then go after it with a strategic approach. And that's what type A mentalities do.
Yeah, don't get it confused with just go out full force without a plan. It's really saying that I know what I'm trying to accomplish. Like I said, find your talent, find your skill set, your strong suit. Because at the end of the day, you want to be able to encompass all of these. So like the last one, you might come off as non-agreeable, or but simpler word, a jerk, because you can't get to the top. I hate to say it. People think that you can be everybody's person, social butterfly. The sad truth is, to get to the elite level, because we're not talking about just being good, we're talking about being great. You're gonna have people that don't think the best of you because they look at you as arrogant, conceited. But what it really means is you're doing whatever you have to do to get it done, and that may come to the sacrifice of people liking you. But non-agreeable means I'm not gonna just let anybody tell me what to do. Because you can't be hyper competitive when you're always saying, sure, no problem, I'll take that. You have to be able to say, nah, I'm gonna crush you. Yeah. Even if it's something simple as you work at a job and you got a sales goal, destroy your coworkers.
Well, and that goes with fighters in general. And you have to be somewhat selfish. If you're an athlete, a fighter, right? You have to put yourself first in a sense, because if not, then again, you're not gonna pursue what you need to pursue because you're going to be worrying about other people, right? So for that, it definitely works in that favor. Not saying that this is something that you should strive for the rest of your life, but at the end of the day, if you're looking to enhance the quality of your overall sport, to enhance your position as your sport, whether it be a fighter or in business, you're going to have to be somewhat selfish in that perspective, or in that, I guess you would say, in that perspective. All right, guys. So the reason why we're saying this is because we want type A people around us. So for that, I want to make sure that I invite you guys to the Daru Strong conference at the end of the year, December 11th through the 12th. We're doing a fitness business conference along with a coaching performance conference, having guest speakers out there, all with this type of mentality, because we want to get better and help each other get better as well. So for that, I would say, yes, you're going to be competitive, but you're also going to learn a lot as this goes on. So check it out. Link is down below, or you can go to darustrong.com. If you want to rock some of the type A shirts that we have here, again, go to darustrong.com. You can check out the merch down below. And then also, if you're a coach looking to level up in your overall ability as a coach, to learn some of the methods, the systems, and the protocols that I use for my athletes, we also have Nick's stuff in there too as well. You can check out the mentorship program. Link is down below. One-time fee, and you get access for life. All right. Thanks, Nick.
Hey, no problem. I love it.
Where can they find you at?
Find me on Instagram at Mr. Mental Muscle and on YouTube at The Mental Breakdown.
There it is. See you guys next time. Peace.